picture of the book in the thumbnail this time. It's a bit over my shelf, but I'm reviewing Dark Tower Book 7, but more importantly, the entirety of the series. I everyone's subject to change their opinions and stuff, and so I'm kind of thinking my thoughts on the whole ending as well as book 7. I think I'm just gonna make it one video. Again, this channel's more of an outlet for me, so I don't really care about editing or anything like that. But here's kind of my honest thoughts. So I had kind of a night or two to process, and then I also had an infusion today medically, which kind of helps me see things. So kind of stuff stew in my brain a little more, and I still bounce around a little bit, and I don't have a full concrete opinion. So maybe it'll change again as weeks go by. I think book 7 was a little weird. Not that weird for Dark Tower standards. But I think it was overall good. And I think I even expressed that in my other video, I'm pretty sure. As a series of a whole, I was really, really upset at the ending at first. I didn't like it at all. And then I honestly reread it, I think, almost 2 times, those last couple pages. And so, like, literally 3 times total, plus this, like, ending note and everything. And how do I feel about the ending now in the entirety of Dark Tower? I'm pausing because I'm trying to articulate properly. I think I really actually, I get the ending. I really like it. I think it was one of almost the best endings. And he's done with the story. He won't go any further. He's expressed that, and I kind of respect it. And there's that balance of leaving it up to our interpretation versus kind of screwing us and just not giving us a real ending because you're lazy. So, obviously, spoiler alert going on for this point. I'm gonna talk about like where it is and then what I kind of wish it would be. So, I know for a fact like I put $1 billion on it. Stephen King's not gonna write another Dark Tower book. I don't think he has any interest to. I think he's explicitly said that at the end of his thing in other talks, and I don't think he necessarily needs to. I think the ending is honestly really good now that I read it. So for anyone who hasn't read it or just wants like perfect reiteration, long story short, the Dark Tower he gets to, he ascends it, Roland the main character, and at the top, after kind of reliving all these like memories, he goes back to this thing, and the very last dialogue, or the very last line of the entire series, is the same as the first, which is that he followed the desert after the black man. So it's a time loop thing, and it implies that this is not his first rodeo, and it won't be his last. At first, I thought that was really lame. I don't really like time loops. They're dumb in concept. Whole other rodeo. I also think it's lame because I was reading the Concordance, which is this like kind of tool to help understand the books, and as well as some other stuff, and it kind of helped articulate what I felt. Where it's like he's trying to get to the top of the Dark Tower and deal with whatever being or god or dimension or any of this stuff. Right? There's all this like levels to it, right? And then, okay, cool, cool. And then there's just no God. There's no nothing. And don't get me wrong, I don't need there to be some super powerful deity, but it's just a little bit like it almost blue balled us a little bit. And where I kind of came around is I really noticed the horn, and I noticed the symbolism for like redemption for a second chance. Like, hey, he can get this horn, he can do it better. And there's even a passage in one of those like help book or the Concordance book talking about like he can do it without ruining his heart, his soul, and like his people he loves. And I thought about that. I pondered on it. The balance between too vague and ending, just like screw you guys, I want to write it, and a balance between like, hey, this is really cool. I think it was a pretty good balance, and I really enjoyed the ending. Now it's more sick with me. I actually think it's beautiful. I'm pretty happy with it, but there's a little hole in my heart, and I'm gonna kind of talk about that. After all, so I'm gonna kind of run over my biggest gripes with how it unfolded. Again, these are my gripes, my feelings. He talks about in his postings, like an author's note, how He's gonna tell us about the journey, not the ending, and we should get angry. I don't always gonna believe that. And I'm ready to touch base on that. But I mean, so beginning, middle, and end, or if you just consider journey and ending, I think are equally sometimes a little more than the others, but they both have huge importance in a tale and in real life, right? Like the way I want to describe it is your destination could be your permanent home that you finally own. Let's say when you're 30 something, though in this economy, 50. My point is, let's say you live there for 30 years. That's a destination. That destination is vastly important for your life compared to different choices leading you to living some, you know what I mean? So, but the journey, though, is also all that's led up to. So I think they're both important. I think in the context of this, yeah, it's a little different. Like maybe the ending isn't as important as the entire journey, but it also is because the entire push of the entire plot has been this one thing that we're all kind of waiting to see and getting hyped up for it. Now, I told you, and I think my previous video is that like I'd much rather him have some tragic ending where he dies right before it or something. Could have been a lot of cool there. Yeah, I wouldn't even mind that as much. I think what I really need to see happen, and it never will, and I'm okay with that. I made peace with that. Is okay. He's gonna do his redemption. I think they should have an eighth book. It could be 900 pages. I know it sounds like a lot, but you have another book, and he gets the horn. He goes back, and we get to see this character that we've honestly watched just struggle and lose everyone and make things right to an extent. I mean, how awesome would that be? Maybe there is no God in the Tower, whatever. And maybe he gets to fix this whole timeline, and the price is he gets killed in the Dark Tower, whatever it is. I don't give a shit. There's so much cool shit he could have done. And yeah, you leave it up to interpretation, but tell me how boss that'd be. I mean, Roland gets the horn. He starts back, and we follow him. Now, obviously, they're not as in detail, right? Like, he's not going to redo the entire story 9 pages, but it's going to go then how he's chasing Walter, and then he saves Jake initially. He never lets Jake fall. He draws to the people. He never uses them, never miss, and Nolan doesn't full on use them, but you know what I mean. He's always, and then just kind of how like in other situations, maybe he'll take care of his like I don't know his dry twist. Or there's so many different things he could do with the horn and the symbols. And maybe he's not even like. There's just so much shit he could do differently, and I think to even see that in one book. Hell, actually, I'm gonna say it wouldn't even have to be 900 pages. They could just describe like 100 pages of between like it would be 100, maybe 150 pages of literally him starting, saving Jake. Things be different. You know what I mean? Like I just think it would have been so cool, and then to see him all the way back at the Dark Tower, and to see how that unfolds. Now, my second, maybe even bigger, but my only other really gripe with the series is the following: a lot of build up with certain characters. There's a lot of, and I felt the very similar vibe happening in The Stand, which I did enjoy. So we can talk about that. So, three major characters that I thought were insanely cool, and just nothing happened. Biggest one, honestly, bigger than even the Crimson King, Randall Flagg or Walter. So much aura, so cool. Saw him in The Stand. Stand, same thing. He gets built up, and kind of was a whiff, and finally we get here, right? Finally, we get to this area, and he gets anticlimactically killed in the most lame ass scene with Mordred. No, I mean it just was so stupid. Yeah, some things are anticlimactic, but here's the thing: he could have been, I don't know, he could have been so much cooler. He could have had such a cool fight. I mean, he was really after Roland. I thought it would been a really cool interaction, and you know, let's go to the other two. Mordred was lame. He ambushed. Oi died and then got killed. Almost thought he was gonna starve to death and die. He was a really interesting character, and nothing really happened. Okay. And then Crimson King, the biggest bad of bads, throws some dollar store sneeches and gets mag dumped, aka Race from Resistance, from some yeah. So let's run back to what could have been cool and different. Mordred was a really interesting character. They could have let Roland kill him, or Roland get killed by him, or him let it happen on purpose because it's his son. It doesn't have to happen. Again, the alternate timeline. Roland maybe Mordred doesn't get born, I guess, because if he does things right and different. But if his other party members aren't dead, he's not dying of sleep exhaustion, and Mordred doesn't even get an ambush because Eddie and Susanna are still there, right? I think there's so many good points they could have ran that, and I think what would be really cool is to have the baby just die, like just starve and just whatever. Otherwise, maybe he could have reconciled with the baby. I don't know. There's a lot of cool things he could have done, and then Walter they needed to have a cool Sean with Walter, and that's kind of what really hurt me in that last ending is they they fumbled everything, and not I say they, Stephen King, and it's not fumbled, I get it, but, like, I mean, I mean, people understand what I'm saying, like, you could only do that so much. Like, okay, imagine you're reading Moby Dick. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because Ahab reminds me a lot of Roland, and then instead of Dark Tower, it's Moby Dick, right? You have this character that are obsessing over Moby Dick, and instead of like building him up or you see him or whatever, he just shows up, or he sorry, excuse me, he gets built up, he gets built up, he gets built up, and then instead of like slightly seeing him or any sort of fight, just dies. It's like stupid. They just find him dead. Now, again, if that was a core plot point, sure. Or in certain situations, it can make sense. But like, here's the thing: other books have done some similar things. I'm not new to this. Right. My issue is Stephen King laid out some of the coolest characters and villains that have layered shit going on. Right. Okay. And not one of them had an actual like true ending. Like, I don't need action. I don't need this. But like, can we get something? Like, okay, I'm trying to think of a great example. Like, okay, Wolves of the Kala. They have that fight scene at the end with the wolves, and that's kind of whatever. And there's some other stuff with him and his gunslinger and his wizard and glad. I mean, so there's some fights at the book, right? And they build them up, and these fights happen. Whether they anticlimactic or not, I'm not gonna argue. But fights occur. And to me, it just screams the vibe of. And this is gonna be spoiler for everything I'm about to mention. If you hear me mention it, I'm gonna maybe some spoilers. These are other medias. Let's say you're reading just a more relevant example because I just reread the comics. Let's say you're reading Invincible. In Invincible, they build up characters and villains, and there's multiple threats. But one of the biggest bad ones is Thrag. Now, while stuff is not maybe 100% orthodox, they end up having a huge battle with some of the most amazing dialogue. Ignoring that, they have a battle, and it is glorious. It is inside of a star. And there's other villains who have more fluke endings. But now there's like 20 villains in Invincible. It's not every single one. It's like playing a D&D campaign or any sort of table, and then the biggest of bads is just a fluke. And that's just, on some levels it works, but okay, listen, your biggest bad is somehow a fluke. Not everything leading up can be, or you reader will be mad, and I, in this case, the reader. So like, Red Flag, arguably was more important and got more screen time than the Crimson King. One of the guys I was so excited, especially when he starts articulating his vengeance he has. Then he's killed in the dumbest way by someone I think he's stronger than, and by walking into it, like purposely provoking this guy, which I think Walter slash Randall like so much smarter than it seems so off character. So he's just dead in a second. Mordred's just lame and dead in a second, and Crimson King just throws some sneeches and he just gets erased by some random character we've known for not even like 100 pages. I didn't like that. That didn't feel right. Didn't people go, oh, they saved Pat or the whatever the guy Danville, the drawing kid, and there's this, yeah, it just seemed dumb. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest. And then it's like, okay, there's this kid who can erase anything from existence. Talk about a nutty power. Why doesn't he use that other stuff? Why doesn't he erase, or like he can draw stuff? Why doesn't he draw back like Roland's fingers, or why doesn't he draw back other I mean, there's so much he could do, but he just all of a sudden can't. And I just didn't like that, and it didn't sit right with me. So all in all, I think I really do enjoy the ending. I think the idea of renewal in the horn is phenomenal. I think too many things were unturned, and I think I got too blue balled with the different villains. Now, that being said, overall, ups and downs, there was a little slow patches throughout the journey. I think the journey was fun. I think overall, this book series, in entirety, everything included, gets. I'm gonna quick rate the books one by one. Now I've read them all, everything included, and I'm gonna rate them just entirely as just yeah. I'm not gonna count the expander each because I'm not worried about that right now. Book one, I honestly think was a 9 out of 10. One of my favorites. It gets D tier. I love the writing. I loved how cryptic it was. I loved the action. And I love just the what the hell is going on. Book two expands, nonstop action, and some crazy shit happens. I would give it a 9 as well. Um, just because I know like when they were slowly introducing Eddie and there's all that, some of that stuff was just actually no, that wasn't bad at all. I hold on. I'm trying to think of like overall ranking because I just need to understand my ranks for when I go forward on the channel because I don't want to be like let's say super lenient here and strict. So I'm trying to think. I think for me, an 8 out of 10 is really good. A 9 out of 10 is like phenomenal, and like a 10 out of 10 is like the best thing ever. And there can be some in betweens. So I think then then I think same thing. Book 2 gets a 9 out of 10, maybe a really high 8. I think book 3, really high 8, or like a 9 exactly. I think book 4, I'm so torn on book 4. Knowing what I know now, it's cool. It's interesting. I almost want more. I'd give it an 8.2, maybe 8.5. Book 5, I'd give like an 8.7, not quite a 9. Book 6, some people consider this one the worst. I'd give it an 8. Book 7, I'd give it an 8.5. It includes the ending and stuff. And then so overall, the entirety of the series, and then we rank the ending. I think that's the entirety of the series. It was a nice 8.5. If I had to do like a tier list, it'd be like one of those A tiers, not quite S tier, a pretty solid A tier. Not even, I mean, it's just good. Good for what it is. I think it was an overall fun ride. Overall, really interesting, and not too many letdowns or slow patches. Oh, I guess it's book 4.5. I think that was not really necessary for any lore, but kind of fun. I would give that maybe an 8, but I'm not really gonna include that. It was definitely that was probably one of the weakest books. And then lastly, the entirety of this, or so the entirety of the series, I said 8.5, probably maybe 8.7 in that middle between 8.5 and 9, and then the final ending. How do I feel about that? When more time has set with me, I think the ending of the Dark Tower. I think same as the series. 8, maybe like no, 8.5, maybe 8, maybe 9. It fluctuates a lot in that area. And the reason I say that is because I feel like a lot of books I like have struggles with the endings. Like another great example of a thing I like. I mean, okay, let's put it this way. A lot of things I like aren't finished. So there's a lot of manga I like that isn't finished, like Berserk and stuff. And then there's manga I do like that is finished. Let's take Blade Immortal, just came top of my head, one of my favorite series. I think the ending could have been like, I think the series is like a 10 out of 10. And I think the ending's like a 7. That's me personally. So I think it's always really hard to end and finish a book. I think also Stephen King struggles with that in some books. And I kind of expressed that in my other video, and I'm probably gonna post both. So I think all things considered, then definitely closer to an 8.5 because I think the really only thing I just didn't like is how much it left unsaid and unsung. That being said, it's not like he's legally required to do that or anything of the sort. It's also not like it's bad. I think the thing that makes me a little is just that you kind of have to like, figure it out and you kind of have to like do some deeper diving, which is always fun about an ending. But like unless you look deeper into like the horn, and maybe I'm just dumb and didn't notice on the very first like time reading it, you're just sitting here and it's just so out of left field. But I think 8.5. No, I think I might have to give. I'm forgetting what the actual ending like the Dark Tower 8.5. But I think the ending in general is gonna be a solid 8 for me. It was good. But with how he fluked the villains, I couldn't fully recommend it. And maybe now again, if he wants to get like, and again, he's not gonna ever see this video. 4 people maybe, and 2 of them, my mom will see this. But if you want to see, like, in my opinion, like 9.5, like 10 out of 10, maybe arguably one of the coolest endings ever in fiction. He just needs to write one more book. He just needs to really show us how it's done differently, right? Like, I again, I think the first example comes to mind, and it's not even remotely related, but again, Invincible Comics, there's an issue where he goes back and he has a chance to relive this, and they kind of show it. Again, it's only for like an issue or so. They show this stuff really briefly, but how he does things differently. And then he gets a choice between the timelines. Now, obviously, it wouldn't happen like that, but I think it was just, even though it was like he ended up choosing, no, fuck this, right? It's still really cool seeing that. And so I think like even if it's like a side book or like a 7.5 or a 6 some sort of 0.5 whatever fuckery he wants to do, that would be cool. I think, and I'm just really bummed we haven't seen that yet. I want to see what would happen with Roland doing things differently because basically what it does is this is almost the bad ending it gives us. And then it says, hey, there is a chance for a better one. Hey, there is a chance for something cooler, but we don't know. And again, I'm all for the open ending. I'm all for this. What does that look like to you? But at a certain point, when I'm with you on this ride for 8,000 pages in the extended read, you got to give me a little more than that. That's my take. But overall, series, I think, like I said, is about an 8.5, 8.7 maybe, and the ending's a solid 8. I wish 3 and 8 is great. Unless 8 is good. 8 is Enjoyed it. Maybe we'll consider a reread, especially those high rates. That's nearing like awesome and 10 out of 10 is like perfection. So an 8.7 for me is not by any means bad. I'm only trying to be a little bit conservative with my ratings because I'm going to be reading a lot, reviewing a lot, and I don't want to be giving every single thing a 10 out of 10. Really just kind of waters down the thing. You know what I mean? So thanks for watching.